So 2 weeks ago, I posted on the community page on my stream, on my YouTube page, that I want to do a question and answer style video. I only got 4 questions, but they are 4 solid questions. But make sure, because I'll do this again in the future, if you have a question for me, if you've been thinking about asking me a question, but you're never in a live or you never know when to ask it, this is the time to ask it. So if you have any questions for me, personal, professional, and literally anything, post it in the comments below for this video. Let's jump in now to the 4 questions that I got from the awesome viewers that I have. SDC, everyone here knows SDC. SDC left me a question on the community tab, and this actually rolls into a question that Ernie in the chat just asked. So we're going to cover this first. So SDC said, what is the #1 advice you would give to prep for vending a convention? So now I'm going to wrap this into a question that I just got in chat from Ernie, which is doing my first in-person show later this month. What have you seen works best when you sell in person? For SDC's question, I would say bring food and water. The worst thing you can do is go to a convention and be stuck at a table, especially if you're not there with somebody else or there with a group of people who can cover your table for you, and not have food or water. You don't want to leave your stuff unattended for, a long period of time, and you might not be around people who you trust to look after your stuff. So bring a bunch of snacks, bring a bunch of water, just prepare yourself for being there for like 8 hours in one spot and maybe not moving from that spot for the entire time. So you're going to starve if you don't bring stuff for yourself. Another thing I would say is if you can go with somebody, especially if you're doing more than one table, even if you pay them, like if you have a family member who just hangs out and you're like, hey, could you come help me at the convention? I'll buy you dinner afterward, or I will pay you, $100 for the day or whatever, or a percentage of your sales for the day. If you can find someone who can stomach going to a convention and go with you to help, especially if you have more than one table, it's just nice too, because you get a fresh set of eyes on your setup as well. So I've had times where I've set up my entire thing and I have someone come in and look at it and they're like, well, this entire section is like blocked off. Like, how are you going to help people? Or how are you going to reach over to get, cards or whatever from this section when you've got this big thing like in front of it? How is, and then it's like, oh shit, okay, so let me move the big thing into a spot where I can actually, access everything on the table. So it's nice to get a second opinion. So now to Ernie's question. So Ernie is doing his first in-person show later this month. What have you seen works best for you when you sell in person? Well, it really depends on the show, because I would bring different things to like a local, smaller convention than I would to like a Collecticon. Like a Collecticon, I would be more willing to bring like more expensive slabs, graded stuff, more expensive stuff, because the people who are walking through Collecticon are going to be there for collecting cards, and they're going to be used to seeing slabs, and they might be more used to buying graded stuff and more used to the prices of grading stuff. Where if I'm going to go to like a Comic-Con, like a local Comic-Con, probably not going to bring a whole lot of like higher end graded stuff, because typically the people who are going through there are people who are there for a different purpose. Like maybe you got invited to go to a sports card show, right? So you're going to have a bunch of people going for sports cards, and what you're going to want to do is try and get the parents to bring the kids to your booth because you're a Pokemon guy, right? So when you're talking about the majority of your customers coming in to a smaller show is going to be like kids and their parents, you're going to want a bunch of lower cost raw stuff. So a lot of times for events like that, I'll have a bunch of like $1 to $5 singles of popular Pokemon, or VMAXs or EXs or things from recent sets that aren't too expensive, like $20 or less, in a bunch of binders, and usually those sell really well in comparison to graded cards. Now, the nice thing about graded cards, you only need to sell like 3 or 4 of them to do fairly well in graded because of how much more expensive they are. But I would say for a smaller show to bring a bunch of binders of like $20 or less cards for the kids that are going to come up, because most likely if you're a small local show, and especially if the show isn't designed around TCG or Pokemon, if it's like a comic book show or a sports card show, you definitely want to bring some stuff that's probably lower cost. Packs sell well at those shows too, because kids are always going to want to come up and rip some packs. And a lot of times they'll buy like a couple singles, and then they'll ask their parent for a pack, and then they'll buy a pack. And it's super fun when kids buy packs, because they'll open them. It's a double-edged sword when a kid buys a pack and opens it at the booth, because most likely they're not going to hit anything crazy. When they do, it's super fun, but then when they don't, it's like, sorry kid, or you have to like get really excited about a holo or something in the pack. And you have to like make it worth it for them. But I think now everyone understands that like opening packs is basically gambling, and you know, sometimes you're gonna hit something cool, sometimes you're not. But it's super fun when they do hit something that they like and they get really excited about it. You get to see the future of the hobby, be excited about the hobby. I haven't done a ton of conventions yet, but I have done a range of them. I've done like a really small town Comic-Con, I've done like a mid-sized Comic-Con, and then I've done like a Collecticon. So I feel like I've done kind of a range of sizes of the amount of people walking through. Different scenarios, you know, you bring different stuff, but for the most part, if you bring stuff, like Dan says, if you bring stuff priced well, you're probably going to do all right. The next question comes from, I think this is Goose. I'd like to hear how you think through best offers and how you decide to accept or not. Somewhat related, how do you think about sell-through rate, given that a fair bit of your inventory is mid-era Japanese? We just went through some of that. How long do you expect a listing to sit, and do you adjust if it hasn't sold in a certain period of time? All right, so we got a bunch of questions here, but a bunch of really good stuff. Some stuff that I honestly don't even think about. How do you think through best offers, and how do you decide to accept or not? When it comes to best offers, I use the auto decline function a lot. And I've also been starting to use the auto accept offer a lot. And I feel like that saves me a lot of time to set up that auto accept as well. So basically what I try and do is I just try and think of like, what's an acceptable price? Like, what would I take? If we were going to go back and forth on this card, what would I take? And what it usually boils down to is like, if a card is between like 50 and 150, I'll do like a best offer of like $10. Anything under $10 gets auto rejected. Anything, you know, like between the 10 and list price gets auto accepted, something like that. Because typically that $10 range is going to hover somewhere between like 10 and 20% in that range. So for that, I kind of do that. I always try and meet people in the middle. So before I was doing the auto accept, I would always try and meet people in the middle, no matter what they sent me. So if I had a card that was like $60 and they offered me 50, I would always counter with 55. Sometimes it seems stupid to like quibble over like $5 or like $2.50, but I mean, it adds up over time. So before I used to be a lot more active. Now I just set up the auto accepts, and if people, you know, offer anything in that range, it just gets auto accepted. A lot of that is now automated for me. It's something that I did here recently, and I feel like it's been really good to not have to go back and forth and not have to answer every best offer thing that comes through. Somewhat related, how do you think about sell-through rate? I don't. This is probably a bit of an issue. I don't. I am super patient when it comes to sell-through rate. So I don't auction, no matter what the card is or no matter how long the card's been on eBay. Typically, what I will do is I will adjust price quite a bit. Or recently, I've started using the deals function where you can mark a card off a certain percentage, and that's been working pretty decently for me. So an example that I have, I opened some of the classic collections, and I got quite a few of those classic collection cards graded through like PSA and CGC. And if you've been paying attention to those cards are extremely cheap in like CGC 10 and PSA 10. What I've been doing here recently to try and move the rest of them, because I've moved a lot of them so far, I just need to move the rest of them, is that I will set up a deal, and I'll search, like when I'm setting up the deal, I'll search classic. All the classic collection cards show up, and then I think it was last weekend, I did like a 15% off every classic collection card. I don't know if I'm lowest listed on those cards anymore. And honestly, I don't want to go through and do all that work of doing it again. So now I'm going to start using that deals function instead of going through and like manually updating all prices. I've been thinking about different strategies to do different deals, like, oh, this weekend or this week, I'm going to be all Charizards are 10% off, or all Venusaurs are 10% off, or all GXs are 10% off. I've been thinking about figuring out those different deal structures I can do, and then try and use my, try and generate some ad revenue or whatever through my eBay affiliate links. So there's probably some deals I will try and do to better like market my eBay and market, you know, that affiliation that I have with eBay. So let's see. Given that a fair bit of your inventory is mid-era Japanese, how long do you expect it to sit? I have some cards, honestly, that have sat for like 2 years on my eBay because they are, you know, a mid-era Salamence or a mid-era Bennett and a PSA 9 or something like that. That's just not moving. That is just chilling. And you know, every few months I'll go through and I'll adjust prices of things that have been sitting around a while. But I just have a lot of patience. I should probably be more thinking about my sell-through rate and not worrying so much about auctioning stuff and losing a little bit, you know, to free up capital to buy more stuff. But I'm just not really worried about it. Like, not everything has to move fast. I've had some cards here recently that I've sold that I've had for like a year and a half, and the profit margin on them is good because I just stuck it out. I sold a PSA 10 Arceus from Advent of Arceus. It was the 040 DPT in a PSA 10. And also there was another one that I sold. It was a PSA 10 for Alligator from Golden Sky Silvery Ocean, I think, 026 106. Those two cards have been sitting for at least a year. And I sold the Arceus for 180 and the for Alligator for 100. If I had auctioned those cards, I would have gotten a fraction of that. So, I mean, it really just depends. Like, some people, sell-through rate is much more important to them. Like, they want to move and they want to churn, and no matter what the profit is, they're okay with it as long as they're making a little bit. For me, it's like, I would rather just hang out and wait on it and make as much as humanly possible on a particular card than kind of churn and burn, you know, especially mid-era stuff. I've heard when Java's at his worst, he'll auction off mid-era 9s. The only things I'll auction is like high liquidity, low cost PSA 10s, CGC 10s. I'll auction those to like free up that capital because usually I can at least break even or make a little bit off of, you know, like Radiant Charizards and PSA 10s or Pikachu VMAX Core promos and PSA 10s, like that type of stuff. Usually you're not going to see me auction like high-end mid-era GX, like any of that type of stuff, because I know it's going to underperform compared to buy it now. I think he was looking for a formula, like every 3 months you drop prices 10%. Yeah, I don't do anything like that. Every once in a while, I'll get like a wild hair to like go through my eBay and adjust prices. But now, you know, I'm getting to the point where there's like 300 items on there and adjusting prices is going to take a long time. So for me, I guess I'd rather do sales. I'd rather do like 15-20% sales on stuff that I want to move, and hopefully that helps them move. Question from Whiskermon. When do you decide to use CGC or PSA when looking to submit cards for grading? And after selling for a few months now with the new CGC slabs, how have you found CGC prices, especially in the pristine compared to PSA 10? In the last few months, I haven't been using CGC at all. Because they have slowed down considerably and they are much slower than PSA right now in terms of turnaround time. So I actually haven't been using CGC at all, but I think on the whole, when I was using them, CGC Pristine 10s seem to, for a lot of cards, maybe not all cards, but maybe the majority of cards, they were selling at or maybe a little bit higher than a PSA 10. I don't know if that's still the case because I haven't used them in a while, but at the time, that's what my experience was they were kind of at or a little bit higher than a PSA 10. For me, it's all about speed. And right now, the company that gives me the most 10s and is the most lax on grading is the fastest. So I'm going to send to them. When CGC was turning, you know, submissions around in a week, I was sending a ton of stuff to them because it was $9.60 and I got cards back in like 2 weeks. It was insane. But now that they either cut back on manpower or they're, you know, partnering with mystery slab things and they're grading 200,000, you know, cards a month, if that has slowed them down further than PSA, then speed is everything. And if I'm going to go for a moonshot, I'll send to Beckett for a black label. But for me, for business and everything, the consistency of PSA with the lax grading and getting a bunch of 10s and everything, with my pre-grading style, it seems to fit pretty well, and they're liquid and they sell decently. So right now, I'm just using PSA. No, it's all about speed when it comes to grading. It's all about patience when it comes to selling. I want to get the cards back as fast as possible, but sometimes they'll sit for a little while for me to get the maximum amount out of them. But this is good. I'm glad I'm answering these questions and you guys are giving me feedback because I could be totally freaking wrong on some of this stuff. All right, the last question we have, and again, guys, if you want to be featured on the next one of these, leave a comment down below underneath the video, and we'll go through your question next time. So we have Wyatt's Collectibles, and I remember this question being a very good question as well. Hey, so I'm a seller on eBay myself and need some help with selling bin listings consistently. When I list a bunch of slabs from a return, a lot will sell, then it really slows down. My listings are fine, my prices are amazing. Do I need to keep growing my eBay and get more listings, or should I do more auctions, etc.? So what it sounds like is you get a submission back like I just did of, like 35 cards, you list them all up on eBay, and in the first couple weeks, you sell 10 of your cards, and then for the next 6 months, the other 23 are just sitting there, and they don't seem like they're getting a lot of attraction, or they're not selling quickly, or they've become stale or stagnant. Depending on the size of your store, what I would say is you probably need to take a look at your prices. You need to make sure that you're still, lowest listed or close to it, or that your price makes sense, because what can happen is, especially with modern or sets or prices that are moving, consistently, you have to kind of check every week or so to see if it's a modern card, if you are well above the listed price. Because sometimes like a PSA 10 Charizard from the new set may start out, and the first few sales might be 300, 350, and then 2 weeks later it might be 180 or 200, but yours is still listed on eBay for 350. So there is a point, depending on the card or depending how new the cards are, that you probably will want to go in and take a look at your prices and make sure that they are consistently sticking around like that lower end of what's listed on eBay. What I try and do is list everything at basically low list. It's tough though, because sometimes some people, for some reason, are already low list, and then they put like a 20% off coupon on that card, so then they're low list minus 20%, and then you're like, well shit, am I gonna beat that, or am I gonna beat the coupon? Because the coupon might fall off in a week, or it might be there all year, but if I'm low list after the coupon, then I might even actually lose money. You guys out there that are already low list and putting 20% coupons on your cards, I got a few choice things to say to you. See, those are the people that aren't patient. Those are the people that sell-through rate are important and they want to sell stuff quick. But yeah, definitely, if you got some new modern stuff, you feel like your stuff has slowed down or become stagnant, definitely look at your prices, go through and audit them, and make sure that you are low list or you have a good price. Do I just need to keep growing my eBay and get more listings, or should I do more auctions? Well, this stuff I'm not 100% sure. A lot of people say that you should list something every day. So what I've been trying to do this year is list like 3 to 5 cards every day. Because if you're consistently listing, I guess the algorithm favors people that are consistently putting things on the platform. But that is something that a lot of like really savvy eBay people do, I think, is list a little bit every day, or at least very consistently. One thing that you can do as well is you can use the promoted listing feature if you're not already. The promoted listing feature is awesome. All of my cards on eBay get at least a little bit of a promotion on them. Usually I do like the minimum promotion. I'll do like 2.5% or something like that promoted, but I will put like a little bit above the minimum, because I feel like the majority of people will probably throw on the minimum, so I'm like, I'll just do a little bit above the minimum. And that, I think, seems to help with the impressions side of things, is if you're promoting. What some people will do is they will price their item up 10%, and then they'll put a 10% promotion on it. So you're getting the benefits of putting a 10% promotion, which is a pretty high percentage for promotion, but you've priced it a little higher to compensate for the promotion. A lot of times when people are going to eBay, they're not actually sorting by lowest. So the first card that they're going to see is the one that's basically promoted the most. And some people just buy those promoted cards. They don't even care that there are cards that are less expensive. So that's something that you can try out too, is maybe you raise your prices a little bit, but then slap a giant promotion on it to kind of up the amount of impressions that your listing gets. We got a question from chat here. Do you ever send offers to watchers? Yes, and I use the automatic offer feature now as well. So basically, when you go on your eBay, there's a little button that pops up above your listings, and it says send offers, and then it will show you how many cards you can send offers on. So if you click that button, you can send offers via percentage, or you can sometimes you can send offers on individual cards. If it's only like one card you're sending an offer on, you can send like a dollar amount. So there are some cards, a lot of cards, that I'll do like 5%, 7.5%, 10%, and then you can click an automatically send offers feature. So what that does is if someone new watches your card, it will automatically send an offer after a certain amount of time to that person for that 5%, 7%, 10% off. And that's something to do on the buyer side too. If you're looking at something that you want to purchase off of eBay, a lot of times what you want to do first is you want to put it in your watch list. Because then if a seller has the automatic offer function, you don't want to pay more than you have to. So add it to your watch list, wait like 24 hours and see if an offer gets sent to you, because most likely, you might get, like a 10%, 20% offer on it, and you just saved money. Your listings are slightly higher than MSRP. What do you mean by MSRP? Like market price? When I start, I list everything lowest listed. And then, as it progresses, there's definitely some cards that I'm going to be on the low end, on the high end, somewhere in the middle, because I can't consistently audit, 300 some items like weekly. That would take a long time to do. All right, guys. Well, that was the last question in this Q&A video. Thank you guys very much for leaving questions, and definitely leave questions down below. Hopefully I get to the point where I'm just answering questions for an entire stream and we're going back and forth in chat and I'm answering questions from you guys. Leave some questions in the comments below and I will answer them in the future.